1 minute ago, Ford shocked the entire car market with its latest announcement. That's right, Ford just dropped prices again, and the car industry didn't see this coming. Ford has quietly rolled out aggressive new price cuts across multiple models. We're talking pickups, EVs, SUVs, the kind of move you expect from startups or disruptors, not a legacy automaker like Ford. So why now? What's really going on behind the scenes? And who will win or lose from this shockwave? According to multiple sources, Ford is offering its employee pricing discount program to all customers under a new initiative dubbed the From America for America plan. What makes this unusual? Most manufacturers offer seasonal rebates or incentives. Ford is purposefully cutting list prices or offering deep discounts across its range, even when most competitors are faced with cost pressures and are in fact raising prices. For example, the legendary Ford F-150, Ford cut the price on certain trims by over $2,000 for the 2025 models. That's a huge signal when you're selling trucks that often start north of $40,000. So yes, this is real, and the timing is very deliberate. Ford builds roughly 80% of its US sold vehicles in the US, which gives it a built-in cost advantage compared to rivals that rely more heavily on imports. It also has higher inventory, more than 4 months of supply in February versus the industry's 3-month average. That creates room to be aggressive on pricing. Translation: Ford is using its production and cost structure advantage to undercut rivals. That sends a message. If you're a competitor, especially in EVs or trucks, you're now under pressure. In the EV and truck markets, where margins are tight and competition is fierce, Ford's move may force others to either cut price, accept lower profits, or double down on value. And that means you, the buyer, might get a better deal, or you might see older model values drop faster. Is this a masterstroke, or does it hint at deeper trouble? Let's dig in. Ford announced earlier that it's restructuring to be more cost competitive globally. If you're cutting costs across the board, you can afford to pass some savings to the customer and use pricing to drive volume, clear inventory, push market share. But there's another side. EV demand has been soft, inventories are piled up in some segments, and the competitive environment is heating up, so the bold price cuts could also be a signal of pressure, either to move volume or protect market momentum. Is Ford starting a price war? For now, maybe, but it's a war on its own terms, leveraging production strength, cost control, and a broad lineup to take aim at segments where rivals might not have as much margin flexibility. Here's where it gets personal. If you're shopping for a car or following automotive stocks, here's what to watch. For buyers, this is a chance. Whether you're looking at a Ford truck, SUV, or EV, the timing might be favorable. For competitors, companies without the same US-built cost base or high inventory could feel squeezed, especially if they need to protect margins. For investors, watch how the pricing moves affect Ford's profitability. Volume might go up, but margins could fall unless cost savings are real. EV buyers in particular should pay attention. If Ford slashes prices to accelerate adoption, the ripple effect might force other EV makers to match or risk losing market share. And here's the kicker. This is just the start. If Ford is willing to reshape pricing now, imagine what's next when new EV platforms come online or when supply chains stabilize further. So stick around, because in just moments we'll unpack the economics behind Ford's new price structure, what analysts missed, what could happen next, and how this reshapes the EV, SUV, and truck landscape. Alright, now let's break down the economic logic behind Ford's decision, because this move wasn't random, it wasn't emotional, it was strategic. Ford, along with most automakers, has quietly been lowering its manufacturing costs. New battery suppliers, automation in factories, platform sharing, and simplified production methods have reduced the cost per vehicle, especially in EVs. In simple terms, Ford is betting on volume over margin. Instead of making big profits per vehicle, they want to sell more vehicles fast, especially in segments where competition is heating up. Now, this is where analysts are split. Some analysts argue this is brilliant. Ford is triggering momentum, gaining market share, and shaping buyer perception before rivals, especially EV startups, mature. But others say this signals demand softness, especially in EVs where buyers remain cautious about pricing, charging infrastructure, and long-term value. So which is it? Maybe both. Make no mistake, these price cuts will ripple across the market. Tesla may need to respond because Ford's F-150 Lightning just became more competitive overnight. Rivian could feel the pressure in the adventure EV space, and traditional brands like Toyota, Ram, and Chevy now face a buyer question they weren't prepared for. Why should I pay more for your truck? Ford just reframed the buying conversation, and that alone could shift sales dynamics for the next 6 to 18 months. Okay, let's break it down so you know exactly what to do depending on your situation. Thinking about buying a Ford soon? This could be the start of a buying window, especially if more trims or dealer incentives follow. Own a Ford already, your resale value might dip slightly, short term, but long term, a larger fleet may actually boost parts, aftermarket support, and brand ecosystem value. Shopping other brands? Hold on, deals and competitive responses could be coming. Investing in the auto or EV sector? Track how other brands respond. Rising incentives often signal early industry price wars. Ford didn't just lower prices, they changed the narrative. And the craziest part, we may only be in phase 1. What comes next? If Ford escalates the price war, will other automakers match or collapse? Buckle up, because the next chapter could reshape the automotive world. So let's talk next moves, because if Ford is playing chess while everyone else is still opening the box, things are about to get interesting. If Ford continues pushing prices lower, even slightly, the effects won't just be about consumer savings, it could trigger a full-scale market reset. If other automakers respond with their own cuts, especially in EVs and half-ton trucks, we enter what economists call a competitive correction cycle. This creates a win for consumers and a nightmare for slow-moving legacy brands. If rivals ignore Ford and keep prices higher, something else happens. Ford could quietly grow its market share, especially in key categories: full-size trucks, family SUVs, electric pickups, entry-level EVs. And trust me, a market share is the real currency in the auto world. Now here's the part no one wants to say out loud. If the pricing war deepens, we could see weaker EV startups, or even smaller international automakers, quietly exit certain markets. Price pressure kills companies that don't scale fast enough. So flash forward 5 years. What could the world look like if Ford's move becomes an industry-wide shift? Cars become more affordable again, ending the trend of skyrocketing prices. EV adoption accelerates, not because of incentives, but because it finally makes financial sense. Automakers rely less on dealership markups and more on transparent pricing. Battery and platform sharing becomes the norm, reducing manufacturing complexity. Software, service, and subscriptions become new revenue models, not just vehicle sales. In other words, Ford's price cut might be the spark that forces automakers to stop overpricing cars and start earning customers with value, tech, and trust. Whether you're a truck fan, an EV buyer, or just someone waiting for fair pricing in the car market, Ford's move is massive. This isn't just a discount, it's not just a promotion, it's a statement. The days of overpriced vehicles may finally be ending. So what comes next? Well, buckle in, because in our next segment, we're diving into the real disruptor, how dealerships are reacting, and what they're doing behind the scenes to fight or profit from Ford's new pricing model. And trust me, that part gets spicy. Alright, this is where things get interesting, and honestly, where most people have no idea what's really going on. Because while Ford's price cuts shocked the market, the biggest reaction isn't coming from competitors, it's coming from dealerships. Multiple dealers say the announcement came fast, and with almost no warning. That means pricing structures, financing packages, and sales scripts had to be rewritten overnight. Dealerships scrambling, confusion at the sales level, profit margins shrinking instantly. And when margins shrink, especially on high-demand models, dealerships start asking questions. Now, not every dealer is upset. Some see this as exactly what the market needed: more traffic, more test drives, more conversions. But others, they're calling this move a financial ambush. Let's be honest, dealerships have relied heavily on markups these last few years. Some models saw $10,000, $15,000, even $20,000 in added fees during the post-pandemic shortage. Ford's price cut strips away that padding and forces dealers to sell closer to actual value. Insiders say some dealer groups are already pushing back, asking Ford whether this is temporary, whether additional dealer incentives are coming, and whether they'll be compensated for lower margins. Is this permanent? How do we make money now? Will rival brands follow? And spoiler, if Ford holds its ground, dealers will have no choice but to adapt. So what does all this mean for you when you walk into a Ford dealership? Harder to justify markups. Dealers now have way less room to inflate prices. Better negotiation leverage. You now have Ford's new pricing as a reference point. More transparency. Price cuts plus competition. Cleaner pricing sheets. Inventory access. Dealers want vehicles moving, not sitting. This might be the best buyer leverage American consumers have had in years. Now here's the tipping point, because everything hinges on what happens next. If Ford stands alone, this becomes a bold but isolated strategy. But if even one major competitor matches these price levels, we are officially in a full-scale automotive price war. So here's the big question. Is Ford disrupting the market or rewriting it? We may be watching the first major shift in automotive pricing since Tesla disrupted EVs. Except this time, it's happening across trucks, SUVs, and mass-market vehicles, not just electric cars. Next, the winners, the losers, and the brands most at risk if Ford doubles down. Stay tuned, because the car market is changing faster than anyone expected. Alright, now let's break down who benefits from Ford's pricing shockwave, and who could be in serious trouble. Let's start with the obvious, you. For the first time in years, buying a new vehicle may become affordable again instead of feeling like buying a house. People who have been waiting, debating whether that F-150, Explorer, Mustang, or Lightning was worth it, now have a reason to head to the dealership. Ford just removed the hesitation barrier. Businesses buying multiple vehicles, contractors, delivery companies, government fleets stand to save tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that could ignite a wave of commercial demand. Companies like Rivian, Fisker, Lucid, and VinFast may feel the most pressure. Their business models rely heavily on selling at higher prices to recover R&D costs. Brands that rely heavily on imported vehicles face higher manufacturing and logistics costs. They may struggle to match Ford's aggressive pricing while maintaining profit. If they can't respond, their market share may shrink, especially in trucks and SUVs. This one's simple. If your dealership business model relies on huge markups, your business model just got hit. Lower new car prices almost always drag used car values downward, especially vehicles 1 to 4 years old. So if you just bought a lightly used pickup thinking it was a good deal, well, the math may change. Some brands stand in the middle, watching carefully. Tesla, GM, Stellantis, Ram, Jeep, Dodge, Volkswagen. These companies have the scale and manufacturing efficiency to respond, but they're waiting to see if Ford's move is temporary or permanent. We're watching a power shift. This isn't just pricing, it's positioning. If Ford emerges from this with higher market share and stronger customer trust, this could redefine the auto industry hierarchy. So here's the scoreboard, simplified. So the dust is far from settled, but the message is crystal clear. Ford didn't just change pricing, they changed the rules of the game. Whether they'll admit it or not, Ford and Tesla are now on a direct collision path. Not because they make similar vehicles, not even because they compete in the EV space, but because they're now fighting for the same thing, price-based dominance. Ford used to compete with GM, Toyota, and Ram. Now, the rivals have changed. For years, Ford's competitive targets were Chevy Silverado, Toyota Tacoma, and Ram 1500, traditional truck wars. But with their latest price cuts, especially on the F-150 Lightning and Mustang Mach-E, Ford isn't just entering Tesla's territory. They're storming the front door. Tesla built an empire on innovation and efficiency. Their pricing power comes from control, batteries, software, production scale, and a simplified model strategy. Ford is betting on variety, availability, and brand familiarity, especially among truck and SUV buyers. Let's map the direct battles now forming. This matchup is almost symbolic. Lightning now has the price advantage, but Cybertruck has the branding shock factor. And here's where things get interesting, the $25,000 EV segment. Both companies are rumored to be planning a budget-friendly electric car, and whichever launches first could dominate the next decade. Well, it depends on one factor. If EV demand responds strongly to Ford's pricing cuts, if more buyers cross the line because the price finally makes sense, then Ford has the momentum. But If Tesla responds with their own price cuts, production ramp, or a new mass market EV launch, then another wave begins. This moment isn't just about cheaper cars. It's not just about EV adoption or sales figures. It's about which company becomes the default American automaker of the future. Ford, with its century of legacy, factories, and loyal buyers. Tesla, with its technology, culture momentum, and innovation speed. So the stage is set, strategies are in motion, and the next move could define the automotive landscape for the next decade. If the price war escalates, which brands collapse first? Because make no mistake, when giants fight, someone else always gets crushed. Now that Ford and Tesla are on a collision course, it's time to talk about the uncomfortable part of this story. Not every automaker survives a price war. Companies like Lucid, Fisker, VinFast, and even Rivian are operating on thin margins, limited cash runway, and small production volume. If Ford drops EV prices further and Tesla responds, startups selling 60K to 80K EVs will face a brutal question. Why would buyers choose them when legacy and tech giants offer more for less? Mazda, Subaru, Mitsubishi, beloved brands, but not dominant in trucks, EVs, or pricing flexibility. They could survive, but not without reinvention. Toyota, Honda, Hyundai, and VW aren't in danger now, but if their supply chains stay more expensive than Ford's US-based manufacturing footprint, their pricing ceiling becomes their biggest weakness. And Ford just lowered the floor. If some dealership networks refuse to adapt to lower profit margins, transparent pricing, or EV-first sales models, their future becomes uncertain. Now let's talk strategy, because if you're thinking about buying a car, timing matters. Used prices may decline if this pricing strategy continues. If you plan to trade in, sooner may be better. You're not wrong, this could be the beginning, not the peak of price adjustments. Don't panic, a value loss happens slowly, not instantly, and long-term ownership still wins over constant churn. For the first time in years, the leverage is shifting away from automakers and back to buyers. Buyers are in control again. So here's where we stand. Ford fired the first shot, Tesla's watching, the industry feels the tremor, and you, the buyer, are now at the center of a coming war for affordability, technology, and loyalty. This isn't just about trucks, it's not just about EVs, it's about the future of car ownership in America. And this story isn't over, not even close. If you want updates the second the next price drop hits, if you want inside dealership intel, if you want the truth the automakers don't want on record, the one factor that could flip everything. We've talked about pricing, strategy, competition, buyers, dealers, but there's one more piece, the silent variable, that could change this entire story overnight. And it isn't Ford, or Tesla, or any automaker. Right now, government regulations are shifting under the surface. Tax credits, EV mandates, trade agreements, tariffs, and manufacturing incentives are all being reshaped. If the US government tightens EV incentives, some automakers win. If tariffs adjust on foreign-built vehicles, Ford, with domestic manufacturing, gains even more leverage. And if new EV charging funding accelerates, the barriers holding buyers back could vanish almost overnight. There's even a scenario experts whisper about. If states begin aligning on deadlines to phase out gasoline-only vehicles, just like Europe and parts of Asia, the brand with the best pricing, strongest build capacity, and fastest scaling EV lineup becomes the default leader. And right now, Ford is positioning itself to be that brand. So we have a price war, a technology race, a shifting competitive hierarchy, and now, political and economic forces tightening around the industry. Right now, we are watching something rare, something that doesn't happen often in any industry, especially not the auto world. A shift like this only happens at key moments in time, moments when technology, consumer behavior, and financial pressure collide. And when that happens, brands either adapt or they disappear. For the first time in decades, consumers have real leverage again. And major automakers, including Ford, are realizing they can't rely on brand loyalty, dealership control, or legacy status anymore. They now have to compete on something they haven't focused on in years: fair pricing. These buyers aren't just asking, can I afford it? They're asking, is it worth it? Will this hold value? Is this company listening to customers or fighting them? So with Ford making the first aggressive move, the question everyone's now asking is simple: who's next? Because this isn't just a story about a price cut. It's a story about a changing industry. a shifting power dynamic, and the beginning of a new era of accountability in the car market. The automotive reset has begun, and trust me, we're going to follow every twist, every announcement, every reaction, and every brand that thinks they can stay silent. Because this doesn't end here. We are officially past the point of no return. Here's the truth most analysts aren't ready to admit. What Ford just did isn't an isolated event, it's a trigger. Because now every major automaker has to make a decision, and there are only 3 paths forward. Lower prices, fight for market share. This means competitive pricing, aggressive deals, and faster innovation. Consumers win big, profit margins shrink, the race accelerates. Stay expensive, maintain status quo. This is the risky option. Brands hope reputation or loyalty is enough. But in a market with rising interest rates, shrinking budgets, and smarter shoppers, that's a dangerous gamble. Shift strategy, change product markets or tech. This could mean scaling hybrids, outsourcing EV tech, partnering with battery suppliers, or even merging with competitors. And yes, whisper it, but we could see brand consolidations or even exits. For years, automakers controlled the narrative. Prices climbed, dealers squeezed buyers, vehicles became status symbols instead of accessible necessities. But now, Ford has thrown the first stone, and the industry is rippling. In the next weeks and months, every company will reveal their stance, not through statements, but through pricing. We'll be right here, breaking it down, exposing the truth, and making sure you know which brands are adapting and which ones are pretending.